Hello and welcome to a new lesson, Properties of Language. In this lesson, we will talk about 6 properties of language. The first one is displacement. The second one is arbitrariness. The third one is productivity. The fourth one is cultural transmission. Fifth one is discreteness. And the sixth one is duality. Lecture 43. Let's discuss about the topic in detail. Displacement. But before we try to define what really displacement is all about, let's try to understand the literal meaning of the word displacement with an illustration. This is a table, and I have decorated this table with a vase of flower, and I go out of my drawing room. After some time, when I come back, I find that the vase of flower is removed, is displaced by the cat. So I noticed that a few seconds before I had decorated my table with a beautiful vase of flower, but it was soon replaced by the speaking cat. What does it mean? It means that the vase of flower has been displaced, has been replaced by the cat. This is basically the idea of displacement. Therefore, we can say that displacement is defined as the change in position of an object. In other words, we can say the action of moving something from its place or position. This is the literal interpretation of the word displacement. Let's have some more examples to understand the concept of displacement in linguistics. When you ask your pet cat, "Where were you last night?" the cat will reply, "Meow," and you can see the cat. But if you ask the same cat, "Where were you last night and what were you doing?" the cat will have the same response, "Meow." What we understand through these two examples are that animals are not capable of communicating expressions such as last night, on the table, tomorrow, yesterday, and so on. In fact, animal communication is almost exclusively designed for this moment, here and now. An animal cannot effectively be used to relate events that happened in the past or that are far removed in time and place. We have some more ideas to share. Such a property of human language is known as displacement. It enables us to talk about things and places whose existence we cannot even be sure of. It helps us to talk about our dreams and wishes. We continue our discussion. We can refer to mythical creatures, demons, fairies, angels, and recently invented characters such as Superman. This is basically the idea of displacement. A human is able to talk about the events that happened in the past, the events that happen in the present, and the events that may happen in future. So human mind is able to express and communicate in time, whether it is past, present, and future, and in place, like where was I last night, what I am doing at the moment, and what I will be doing tomorrow. So a human mind can relate events both in time and place very comfortably, naturally, whereas animals are not able to do so. This idea of expressing linguistic concept in whatever time it existed, in whatever place it has happened, is known as displacement. Arbitrariness. Please look at this picture. What do you think what it is? We all have seen it. This is called tree in English language. In Urdu language, we call the same object by this word called drakht. In Hindi language, we call the same object by peड़. In Arabic language, we call the same object by the name shajra. In Filipino language, we call the same object by another word, puno. In Latin language, we call it arbor. So what we come to know is that the object is the same, the picture is the same. God has created the same object, but it is known by different names in different languages. Had there been any natural connection between the object and the name given to it, the same object could have been known by the same name all over the world. But that is not so. So what we come to the point is that there is no natural connection between the word and the object, or between the object and the name given to the object, or the name refers to it. Basically, this is the whole idea behind the concept of arbitrariness. Let's try to understand and expand this idea furthermore. What's your name? Well, your name may be Rani, Fatima, Sarah, and so on. But why are you called by that name? I mean, why do people know you by that particular name? That is because when you were born, your members of family called you by that specific name. Your mother and father chose you to call you by any one of those names, such as Rani, Fatima, Sarah, and so on, right? Had your parents chosen to call you by different names other than those of Rani, Fatima, and Sarah, you could have been known to people by different names now. Am I right? So what do we understand by this? What do we infer from it? It means that there is no natural connection between the person and the name given to her or him. Technically, we can say that there is no natural connection between a linguistic form and its meaning. Let's have another example. The object placed in front of us has a particular name with which we recognize. It is known as book in English. The same object or icon has different names in different languages. We call it Kitab in Arabic or Urdu, Pushtak in Hindi, and so on. Had there been any natural or iconic relationship between the object and the name given to it, the same icon or object could have been universally known by the one name only, book. But that's not so. So, what we come to conclude through these examples are that name in no way fits the object or icon it refers to. This property of language is known as arbitrariness. Productivity. Productivity. The word productivity comes from a verb, produce. It means to create. The adjective form of the verb is productive. That is, being creative, being expressive, being innovative, being inventive, and so on. The synonym of the word productivity is creativity. It is akin to, related to, open-mindedness or open-endedness. We continue our discussion about productivity. The potential number of utterances in any human language is infinite. In fact, the human expressions are limitless, unbound, no limit, endless, what we call infinite. Let's have an example to understand this concept, this idea. When I talk about human expressions are limitless and infinite, have no boundary and so on. We have only 26 alphabets in English language. Out of just 26 alphabets, how many number of words do we have in English language? Can you imagine? Thousands, millions. In fact, you cannot count. We move on to the next point of discussion about productivity. How many number of sentences are we able to produce out of those words? Out of those words which we create out of 26 alphabets. Endless, infinite. There is no limit. There are billions of books in the world. Are all sentences or expression in all those books being the same? No, they are different from one another. We move on to the next stage of our discussion about productivity. Every day we get up from bed and start a new day. From morning till evening, we interact with so many people. We joke, we laugh, we form endless number of sentences. Do we use the same set of sentences every day when we meet someone? Of course not. We speak differently in different situations. That is to say, different situations have varied opportunities for us to express, to communicate in our day-to-day meetings with people, with relatives, with friends. Those varied expressions refer to the basic concept of productivity or creativity in human language. We move on to the next point of discussion about, of course, productivity. Writers and poets are the most productive human beings on the earth. They produce endless number of sophisticated expressions or utterances. Thus, we can say that productivity is an important feature of all human languages. Novel utterances, unique utterances are continually being created and expressed. We continue our discussion about productivity. A child is very active in forming and producing utterances which he or she has never heard before. On the other hand, non-human signaling appears to have little flexibility. In fact, animal signals have a feature called fixed reference because animals cannot respond in a way we humans respond in expressing our ideas and feelings. They have set pattern. They have fixed signal, what we call fixed reference. We continue our discussion about productivity. In grammar, we most often speak of productivity in connection with patterns of word formation. For example, the noun forming ness, N-E-S-S, is highly productive in English language, such as happiness, preparedness, usefulness, friendliness, and so on. We have some more examples. The same is true of verbal prefix re, such as rewrite, reconsider, reappoint, renegotiate, replay, reboot, and so on. We continue our discussion about productivity. To conclude, productivity in linguistics refers to the ability of language users to create and understand an infinite number of sentences, including those that have never been heard before. It's a fundamental aspect of human language, an important property of human language. It highlights, that is to say, productivity, highlights our capacity, our ability to use grammatical rules to generate new expressions and convey novel ideas, and convey unique ideas, innovative ideas, and so on. This is all about productivity in linguistics as one of the properties of human language. Cultural transmission. What is cultural transmission? Cultural transmission is a fundamental property of language. It is one of the most important properties of language. It refers to the process by which language is passed from one generation to the next through social interaction and learning. Language is something that is not acquired naturally, like walking, like running, like eating. They are all natural habits. We have some more ideas about, unlike genetic inheritance, which is biologically determined, cultural transmission relies on the ability of individuals to acquire, use, and modify language through exposure to their social environment. So what we notice here is that language is not something we inherit genetically, that if you are brown in color or if you are white in color, normally you inherit those characteristics genetically. Language is something that is transmitted through social exposure. We have another point. This property of language is crucial, is significant for the continuity and evolution of linguistic systems within communities. We move on to the next, that is to say, key aspects of cultural transmission. And what are they? The first one is learning and acquisition. Second one is social interaction. Third one is variability and change. Fourth one is adaptability. And fifth one is intergenerational continuity. Now let's discuss each one of them in detail a bit. So the first one is learning and acquisition. Language is not innate but learned. Language is not natural. Language is not spontaneous. It has to be acquired. It has to be learned. It has to be practiced. You have to make effort to learn the language. Language will not happen to you automatically, will not originate within you automatically. For this, you have to practice a lot. You have to learn a lot. You have to work hard. That is the point here. We have the next point. Children acquire language by being exposed to it in the social environment, primarily through interaction with caregivers, family members, and peers. This process involves imitation, practice, and reinforcement, allowing individuals to internalize the rules, vocabulary, and structures of their native languages. Now, we move on to the next point. Point number 2, social interaction. Language is inherently social and is transmitted through communication. Of course, communication is a fundamental aspect in sharpening your language, in sharpening your linguistic skill. It requires interaction between individuals, enabling the sharing of knowledge, ideas, and cultural practices. We have one more point. Social contexts shape how language is used and understood, influencing dialect, registers, and speech styles. Now we have third point in this direction, variability and change. Because language is culturally transmitted, it is subject to variation and change over time. Of course, language is not static, it keeps changing. And the language which does not change with the passage of time, with the changing milieu of time, that language is most likely to be dead in the long future. Different communities develop distinct languages, dialects, and linguistic norms. We have another point in this direction. Language evolves as new generations adapt and modify it to suit their needs. Of course, like in modern time, the evolution of internet or the revolution of technology has brought into light different types of words and the ways to express the ideas. We move on to the next point, that is adaptability. Language is adaptable to different cultural and environmental contexts. Language is very flexible. It keeps changing. It adapts to changing circumstances. Not only the society affects language, changing environment affects language, but language also itself adapts to the changing environment. It is so flexible. It is so adaptable. It can incorporate new words, concepts, and structures as societies encounter new experiences or technologies. So the horizon of language is really very wide. It can accommodate new emerging terminologies without any restrictions. We have another point. For example, the introduction of the internet has led to the creation of new vocabulary and communication styles. For example, we have different types of emojis and slang words. The last point in this direction is intergenerational continuity. What is this? Cultural transmission ensures that language persists over time, even as individual speakers come and go. This continuity is essential for maintaining cultural identity and cohesion within a community. And now it is time to conclude the topic. Conclusion. In summary, cultural transmission is a defining feature of language that enables its persistence, adaptability, and diversity. And the last point is, it underscores the deeply interconnected nature of language and culture, highlighting how linguistic systems are shaped by and shape the societies that use them. In brief, what I can point out is that language is a product of society and culture. Discreteness. The first is literal meaning of discreteness. What does the word discreteness literally mean? The word discreteness comes from an adjective discrete. Its also spelled as discrete with Discreet. It means separate, distinct, or not attached to others, not connected with others, independent. We continue to the next point of our discussion, that is linguistic concept of discreteness. Discreteness is one of the most important properties of language. It refers to the idea that language is composed of distinct and separable units. It consists of identifiable components, identifiable elements, or which can be easily recognized. They can be combined in various ways to create continuous stream of meaningful thoughts. This property is fundamental to human language. And the last point is, in fact, discreteness distinguishes language from many other forms of communication. Now we move on to the next point of discussion, that is explanation of discreteness. How many sounds do we have in English language? Can you guess? Can you think? Well, of course, we have 44 sounds. But do all sounds in English language sound the same? I mean, is each sound spoken or pronounced in the same way, in the same manner? What do you think? Of course not. So what do we get from this discussion, from this question? What meaning do we derive from this explanation? We come to the point that all 44 sounds in English language are distinct from one another. They distinguish from one another. They separate from one another. They are not the same. In fact, no sound overlaps with one another. That is why we say that all sounds in English are discrete in nature, distinct in nature, independent in sound in nature. We move on to the next point of discussion, that is levels of discreteness. Discreteness at the level of sounds, discreteness at the level of words, discreteness at the level of sentences. Now let's discuss about each level. The first one is discreteness at the level of sounds. The difference between a b sound and a p sound is not actually very great. Both are bilabial sounds. But when these sounds are part of a language like English, they are used in such a way that the occurrence of one rather than the other is meaningful. How? Look at some examples. Look at this word, pack. The initial sound is pa, and then we have another word, back, and the initial sound is ba. Everything is the same, but we have the difference of the initial sound, that is pa and ba, and this makes a greater difference. Everything is the same in this set of words, but the pa sound is completely distinct from ba sound, and therefore we have two different words. We take another example, pat and bat. What do we notice? That the difference between pa sound and ba sound makes all the difference, makes all the distinction in meaning also. Likewise, we have pet, bet, pale, bale, pear, and bear. So what we notice in all these sets of words, that the distinction in the sound pa and ba makes all the difference in meaning and in communication. This is discreteness at the level of sounds. Now we move on to the next, that is point number 2, discreteness at the level of words. How? Let's see. We have the word the. It's a distinct word. We have another word, cat. It is also very distinct from the word the. We have another word, sat. This is also very different and distinct from the word cat or the. Likewise, we have another word, on, another word, the, and we have another word, mat. All these 6 different words are not the same. They are different. But when we put all these words in a meaningful order, like it makes a sentence, the cat sat on the mat. What do we notice? We notice that in this sentence, each word is a distinct element that contributes to the overall meaning of the sentence. We can say that the words in a sentence are discrete units. This is discreteness at the level of words. Now we move on to the point number 3, discreteness at the level of syntax. How? Look at these two sentences. The first one is, the cat chased the dog. Subject cat, the verb is chased, and the object is the dog. If we reverse the order, it becomes like the dog chased the cat. So what we notice is that they have different meanings due to the arrangement of discrete words in a sentence, and thus the meaning changes. So coming to the point of conclusion, what we can say is that discreteness allows for the creation of an infinite number of meaningful expressions from a finite set of units. We have some more ideas. Discreteness is a fundamental characteristic of human language. This property enables precise communication and the ability to convey a wide range of ideas and emotions. In summary, in brief, discreteness in language means that language is made up of distinct, separable units that can be combined in various ways to create meaning. Finally, this property is crucial for the flexibility and richness of human language. Duality. Literal meaning of duality. What does the word duality literally mean? What does it convey? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the quality or a state of having two different or opposite parts or elements. We have one more definition. According to Cambridge Dictionary, the state of combining two different things. So what we mean by the word duality is that having two different or opposite parts or elements being combined into one. We continue to the next stage of our discussion, linguistic concept of duality. What is really a reflection of thought about duality in the field of linguistics? In fact, language operates on two levels. Language works on two levels. It functions on two levels. The first is primary level, and it is related to sounds. It is related to phonemes. And the next one is secondary level. It is related to morphemes. It is also related to sentences. Let's discuss each one of the levels in detail through examples. Duality at primary level, that is to say sounds, phonemes. Example 1, individual sounds. How many sounds do we have in English language? We all know that we have 44 sounds. Out of these sounds, we form a number of words. But do individual sounds mean anything to us? For example, the sound no. Does it have any meaning to us? Does it convey anything to us? Likewise, we have another sound, ba. Does it give any meaning to you? Does it convey anything to us? Of course not. Likewise, we have another sound, e. So what we notice is that all these three different individual sounds do not have any meaning at all. But when we combine them into a form, into a system, into a pattern, we have a new word, nib. And this is the word nib. And this is the picture of nib. So what we notice here is that at one level we have individual sounds, different individual sounds, which do not give us any meaning. But at another level we have the combination of sounds into a system and it gives us meaning. So language works here at two levels. Individual sounds having no combination do not give any meaning, but they do contribute in the formation of meaningful combination of sound, translating into a word. That is the concept of duality. Take another example. Example number 2. As I told, individual sounds like ba, it does not have any meaning. It does not give any sense to us. O, it does not give any meaning to us. Ka, it does not give any sense to us. So this is one level. But when we combine them into a form, we have a word, book. And this is another level. And this is what we call duality of sounds. And we have the English word, book. And this is the picture of the book. So what we come to know is that a primary level of individual distinct sound does not have meaning on its own. But when we combine individual sounds in a systematic way, it creates meaningful words. It creates a message for us. This is basically the idea of duality at the level of sounds. Now, we move on to the next level, duality at secondary level, at the level of morphemes. How? Let's see. We have example number 1. Individual morphemes like un. It doesn't give you a complete meaning. Some sort of meaning might be conveyed, but that's not all. Likewise, ness. It doesn't give any sense to us. Then we have another morpheme, happy. Happy is an independent morpheme, lexical morpheme, because this morpheme has come into birth out of the arrangement of sounds in a systematic manner. So what we come to know that separately some of the morphemes which are dependent morphemes, they do not have any meaning. But when we combine those morphemes into a proper form, into a proper system, then we have the word unhappiness. We have another example number 2, individual morphemes like un, like li. Of course, they don't give us complete meaning. And like, which is independent morpheme, lexical morpheme, it is formed out of the different sounds being put into system, as previously we talked about. Now, when we put all of these 3 into a combination of form, into a system, we have the word unlikely. So what we notice is that phonemes combine to create morphemes, the smallest meaningful units like happy, un, or ness. They create meaningful combinations. This is about duality. Now we move on to the next, that is duality at secondary level, but at the level of sentences. How? Look at the examples. Example 1, we have individual words like speak. Okay, it does give us some meaning, but it does not give you the complete meaning. I, it's pronoun. It does convey something, but does not convey the complete picture of its whole idea. Likewise, we have English. But when, this is one level, but when we put all these different words, individual words, into a system, into a form, we have the sentence like I speak English. We have a complete picture, complete thought. As we know the definition of a sentence, it must give us complete meaning. Likewise, we have another example. 2, we have individual words like a, book, you, read. Normally, when you speak individual words like this, they don't convey any meaning. People will be confused. What are you speaking? They don't give any sense. Please mind your language. But when we put into system, like at another level, when we put into form, into a combination, we have the pattern, we have the sentence like you read a book, and this gives us complete meaning, complete thought. So at one level, we have individual words. Normally, we don't use them because they don't mean anything. At another level, we form into a combination, we form into a pattern, and they give us meaning, complete thought. So what we come to the point is that individual morphemes are then structured into words, words are structured into phrases, and sentences using grammatical rules. In this way, they create meaningful combinations to convey meaning or message. We continue our discussion about duality. Points to remember. So at one level, we have distinct sounds, and at another level, we have distinct meanings when we form into a combination, into a pattern. Then another point, at one level, we have distinct morphemes, and at another level, we have distinct words when we form different morphemes into a system, into a combination, into a pattern. Third, further, at one level, we have distinct words, and at another level, we have distinct phrases. Finally, at one level, we have distinct phrases, and at another level, we have distinct sentences, which give us complete thought. This is basically the idea of duality in the field of language. Now we come to point of conclusion. The first point is This duality of level is in fact one of the most economical features of human language. We as humans, with a limited set of distinct sounds, are capable of producing a very large number of sound combinations, morphemes, words, phrases, and sentences which are distinct in meaning. This principle of duality as a property of language allows for immense flexibility and expressiveness in language. We continue. It's considered a fundamental characteristic that distinguishes human language from many forms of animal communication. It is a very efficient system. And the last point in this direction is Charles F. Hockett is credited with popularizing this concept. Hope you understand the idea. Thank you and goodbye.